is 4 o'clock. Welcome to the Planning Committee meeting of Wednesday, April the 7th. Hang on, we're just checking the sound here. Okay, that should be better. So are there any agenda additions or deletions? All right. The first item is the minutes of the Planning Committee held on March the 2nd, 2021 are here for... Were there any errors or omissions? It was moved by Councillor McNulty. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Liu. Any discussion? See none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. The next committee meeting will be on April 21st at 4 p.m. in the council chambers, and committee members and all of council should have got a memo letting them know that there will be 2 meetings in April, 2 meetings in May, and 2 meetings in June. So I hope you all got that and you have those in your schedule. The first item is the 2021-2031 Richmond Child Care Action Plan. And we have Chris Duggan here to speak about it. Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing further to add to the report, and I'm here to happy to answer any questions you have.
Sure. Are there any questions from committee? Is that Councillor Liu?
Thanks, yeah.
Councillor Liu.
Yep, thanks. Thank you, Ms. Duggan. A lot of work has been gone into this, and this is how many iterations have we had of this now?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, this document is slightly different than the Child Care Needs Assessment and Strategy, as it's a little bit more focused on child care space creation. So this is a standalone first document for the city, which follows up on our 5 previous child care needs assessments.
Okay, so it's bigger, it's better. And now you mentioned in it that you're hoping to move towards, or somebody providing 8 overnight child care type spaces. Now, do we have the type of legislation or rules in place for that to happen, and where do we find out more information for that kind of stuff?
Just let me know.
It sounds like a different...
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, the current child care licensing regulations do allow for 24-hour childcare to be provided overnight. Currently, we don't have any facilities that deliver that type of childcare in Richmond, and the recent pandemic has resulted in increased interest and awareness both from our parents' population and our childcare providers in attempting to deliver this type of service. So the current regulations do allow it. There just doesn't happen to be any at this moment.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully we can, I'd like to refer this report on to the School Board Liaison Committee and send it there as well. So
We can add that as a number 2.
Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. A great report. Thank you very much for bringing us up to date. I'm very concerned with our partnerships and next steps. I don't really see any next steps or immediate places where we should have childcare. If we were wanting one tomorrow, and we had an opportunity to work with somebody that wants to develop, or something comes available in an area, a school or whatever, where we might be able to put it. We don't have a priority list, do we? Like for greatest need, in terms of need?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, just to clarify your question, need as far as a type of childcare or a neighborhood where the
a neighbor, where if we were to have a childcare that could be put anywhere in the city tomorrow, where would you put it?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the highest need that we have right now and emerging is in the city centre neighborhood. Okay. With the amount of development there is going to be an increasing need for childcare.
Okay, again, as development comes along, then that's good to know. And I think we should list it where the greatest need is A, B, and C, maybe the top 3, because when we look at the total numbers of 3,700 needed. We're not going to get them all at once, but at least we could say, instead of this amenity, we want a childcare space. And let's just take Lansdowne, for example. They're going to build that first phase. Maybe we better put a childcare space in there, even if it's only for 30 children or whatever, then that should be one that we put in. We need to know that. And the other thing is, I appreciate us depending on partners, but I think we have to show the leadership and depend upon ourselves to do this. And I think we've got the tools and we've got the report to go ahead with it. And I think it's only to us to keep looking out at the childcare become one of those priority amenities that we request, especially in terms of development as the downtown core is changing. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I see Mr. Ersick is on the line here. I have a question. With affordable housing, we have a percentage of all new housing must be affordable housing. Do we have that with childcare spaces?
Through the chair to Councillor Day. Because it's a different amenity, the details are somewhat different, but we do have in the city centre area plan, for instance, locations identified for potential childcare, and many of the childcare that have been secured through development in the last 5 to 10 years follow that plan. So what we can do is circulate to council some background information. Now, that was the thinking at the time that the plan was prepared, but Chris and Kim and the team have evolved the thinking since then. But we're happy to share that with you in a memo.
Thank you. Just a follow-up comment. I mean, obviously I'll be accepting this and voting for just the recommendations. I would like to ask, if we're finished, Madam Chair, is to refer this to staff for the possibility of looking into whether we could require, just like we do with affordable housing, a certain number, a certain percentage, a ratio, where there must be X amount of new daycare spaces, or in lieu of that, funds put towards daycare spaces. Because the best way to encourage families in Richmond is to make sure we have childcare. And it seems to me that if we can do it for affordable housing, we can do it for daycare spaces.
We can look at it as a standalone referral after this one.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Wolf.
Great, thank you. Through the chair to staff, just a quick question. I'm not sure if statistics are kept, but having a daughter that's 2 years old and using childcare in the city, I've been having, well, from a distance, chats with other parents. Do we know under the key findings, it talks about current demographics and population and stuff. Do we know if the children using the childcare spaces are Richmond residents, or are the families coming to Richmond, dropping off child, and then going to another municipality to work? Do we have records of that? Because from what I've been hearing in the conversations, is quite a mixed bag of where families are coming from that are using our facilities.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that question was not one that has been asked. It is one that could be considered in a future demographic survey. The planning for childcare has always been to meet the needs of both our resident population and our employee population, but I anticipate there is also a small proportion of people who are transiting through the city of Richmond and using Richmond-based childcare on their way to and from work sites and residences that aren't within our municipalities.
Great, yeah, then I would just say that might be a worthiness to include in a future study, not necessarily another independent study. I'm not asking any change to the report, but just from my brief conversations, anecdotal evidence, it seems like that it is prevalent. So, thanks.
All right. Any other questions from committee? The recommendation has been moved and I wanted to add an item number 2, that this be referred to Council Board Liaison. So the first, Yeah, so the first recommendation is that this be adopted, and then second, be referred to Council Board Liaison. So that's all right, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. And Councillor Day, what is your referral? Councillor Day?
My microphone doesn't magically work. Sorry about that, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'd like to refer this report to planning staff for consideration of a policy or bylaw that would require a certain percentage or ratio of daycare spaces for all new developments, similar to what we have for affordable housing.
Is there a seconder? It is seconded. Did you wish to add anything else to that, Councillor Day, or?
Yeah, I would. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I do believe that we have a really good program in place for creating new affordable housing, and over time we've increased that number. And if we could come up with a magic number or ratio or percentage or dollar amount that each new development could contribute towards childcare, I believe we would just naturally and organically get more and more childcare spaces where new developments are, which is most likely where new families are going to live. And rather than do it ad hoc or have it, an area where it's suggested, I think that having a policy is going to end up, or a bylaw, I'm not sure which is the right wording. I believe that would make sure that all future developments have critical daycare spaces.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you. Through the chair. Question to staff. I thought we had some sort of contribution for childcare in some of our buildings, and that's why we end up with some of these childcare hubs in some of our new developments.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, there are two areas, and perhaps Mr. Craig could elaborate if I don't capture these correctly. There are two areas of the OCP where childcare contributions are available through developers. One is the T6 childcare zoning, and that requires a childcare contribution either through space within the development or through funding into the childcare development reserve. And the other is through the village center bonus, which if the development accesses that bonus, there is also a priority contribution for childcare.
Okay, and currently we have the one coming in at the Celtic, and then there's another big one coming in up near Bridgeport somewhere. I think there's another hub coming in. There's two child care hubs coming forward, I think, in the next little while.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, we have an early childhood development hub on Carscallon Way down by Sexsmith and Hazelbridge,
Right.
which should be operational Q2 this year. And we have an early childhood development hub at number 3 Road and Cook, which is anticipated to be completed in the fall, and a third childcare facility in the Oval Village area on Pearson Way, which is anticipated for completion in early 2022.
Okay, so in some developments, we already have this as presupposed, and then this is also just a regular business for people too, so we don't necessarily want to completely cannibalize the market for other people being able to have their businesses, their in-home operations, and their various other things, ways that they provide these services.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu and to the rest of council, we will be able to provide council with a memo that provides the information of what child cares have come on stream over the past few years and how many additional spaces we have currently that exist within city owned child care facilities, as well as the ones that are going to come on board. So we can provide you an update of that as well.
Okay, because it seems to me we just opened another one the other day, and there have been a number that have come online in the last little while, and that's come through the developer contributions.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. I think the referral had merit. My concern is, and I appreciate what Ms. Somerville was just saying, is the concern is to prioritize and find out that where these child care opportunities are. And whether we have them in East Richmond, South Richmond, or West Richmond, or Hamilton, or whatever. We got Hamilton, but maybe it's not big enough. But to know where are these ones that are coming on are fine. But do we know where the next need is? If we don't all of a sudden want all the childcare facilities, and I'm not saying in the city center, when you can't get to the center. And so maybe there should be some spread around that. And that's why I was looking at possibly the referral would have helped prioritize over the next number of years, taking the demographics that are provided to us, especially by the school board, and also by planning staff, that we might be able to do it. Because I don't want to see us depending on others and waiting, you know, so to speak, for an amenity that basically is a handout as opposed to being proactive. Richmond has made a commitment to childcare, and I think we are a leader in childcare, and we've done over the years fairly well. And the need is only going to get greater, so I think we have to have a master plan of where we're going with it, just like we have with development. So basically looking at it now, maybe we don't need the referral. If Ms. Somerville can guarantee the information that is coming, would take care of that referral.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we can provide the information that we have on hand about the future of childcare and potential needs and locations. Some of that work will take some more time. We also need to do some work with the school district who, through their long-range facilities plan and some of their other planning processes, they are looking at childcare as well. So there's a bit more work that may need to be done, but what we can provide you is where childcare currently exists, how many spaces exist in those locations, and what we see coming on board and some of the trends that are coming forward. So we'll gather the information provided in a memo and let you know that what is forthcoming in the future with more planning is done.
Would that also include contributions and where contributions are coming from, and whether we have enough contributions to go into the pot to contribute when we have a partner, or is there something we should be looking at in terms of housing and having a contribution like the art contribution, so much a square foot, a dime, let's just say a dime a square foot for sake of argument, and it goes into a child care fund. Is that part?
We can provide you with an update of what currently exists with funds within the reserves, the child care reserves, and what is allocated and what is unallocated at this present time.
And how we could have more money, additional funds? Because we're never going to get to the bottom of it. The amount of funds that we have, we're never going to have enough money for it. So is it something we should be looking at? And I'd ask maybe planning staff to maybe make a comment on that. Is that a place we should be going? Or is that a place we should...
Madam Chair, if I may, my suggestion is that a really good foundation for this consideration would be for us to assemble the existing policy and requirements that are in place, because you haven't achieved the success that you have with childcare centres with no policy. There's actually a lot of policy already in place. We can also identify some options for evolving that policy, but I think it's a little bit premature to be prescriptive with the solutions, whether it's a levy or whether it's a radius or whatever. There's actually quite a lot of background that we can provide you, and if once you have that, there's a desire, we can certainly evolve the policy further. But I think a really good starting point is just to get on the table what currently exists.
That's the way to go, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Day, did you have another question or a point to make on this?
Yeah, just a brief point. And I appreciate that there are policies in place and that we have gotten new childcare spaces in the last while. But if we refer to page PLN 29, it states in bright blue lettering that 50% of child care operators indicated that reviewing city bylaws and zoning for child care creation is a high priority. And then if I could refer you to PLN 50, the target for 2031 is to take our child care spaces to 10,710. And I'm not, the ideas that I came up with regarding my motion wasn't to prescribe an exact way that we're going to do it, but I think that along with the information that Mr. Ersick is going to be sending in the memo, we clearly do need to add this as part of our zoning process so that we can guarantee that all developments will either A, create shelter spaces, or B, put money towards them.
Mr. Clerk, could you read me what the referral says? Please?
Sorry, 1 second.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the referral currently says that this item will be referred to planning staff for consideration of a policy or bylaw that would require a certain ratio of childcare spaces for development.
Or a contribution, cash contribution, same as we do with affordable housing.
Okay, so I personally, I think that, you know, we have existing things in place. We have made, we have processes, we've made progress. I would be interested in seeing what we have in place right now and looking at options. I don't know if I want something so prescriptive at this moment. Councillor Day, are you willing to have it less prescriptive? You know, to look at options to increasing childcare in Richmond, what those are?
Yeah, that's more than fair, Madam Chair. Yes, because staff are the experts, not me.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested in what are options, opportunities. Other people have talked about certainly what are our priorities, our priority areas, and I think there's lots that staff can work with there. So have you got that changed, Mr. Clerk, to look at options, not so prescriptive? Options to increase childcare.
Sorry,
All
Madam
right.
Chair, is that right at the start of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So seeing no, oh, sorry, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. So it occurs to me that we have some of these policies in place. And so what I heard Councillor Day say was when she read this section of 50% of childcare operators indicated that reviewing city bylaws and zoning for childcare creation is a high priority. So I know we've had people come forward and try to open up childcare facilities on agricultural land, which is clearly not allowed. But I think those are some of the things that people are talking about when they're talking about where can we put this, what can we have, other bylaws that maybe prevent them from being too close to a pre-existing, I don't know, liquor store, whatever else, right? So I think part of it is reviewing existing bylaws that are maybe preventing childcare facilities from being where people are trying to put them.
So are you looking to add that to the referral?
I'd like staff to look and see if there are, or if there have been complaints of instances where people have run into a problem trying to open a place. Forget about agricultural land, we know that that's a no-go, but I think if people have had trouble trying to figure out a place to put it, why have they had a problem? Are we not clear enough in what our bylaw is, or is there or do we need to even reconsider it at all? So.
All right, is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Councillor McNulty. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor? Opposed? So we have now the amended referral. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, item number 2, application by Van Land Use Consulting for a zoning text amendment to the industrial retail IR1 zone to permit a retail liquor store at 12571 Bridgeport Road. Now, we do have Mr. Van Fleet is here. He is the applicant, and Mr. Craig and Mr. D'Souza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple highlights.
The purpose of the application is to allow a retail liquor store at the subject site. Staff evaluated the proposal according to the OCP, III, and Council policy for liquor stores, and found the proposed liquor store location to be inconsistent with the policies in these documents. These inconsistencies include the proposed land use is not consistent with the site's land use designation in the OCP and Bridgeport area plan. The proposal is contrary to the objectives of the III, which include preventing non-industrial uses from occupying industrial land. And the proposed location is not fully compliant with Council Policy 9400, which provides direction on where liquor stores should be located. As per the policy, the proposed liquor store does not comply with the locational criteria to be located within a commercial shopping center and to be at least 500 meters from the nearest park. Due to these inconsistencies, staff recommend the application be denied. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from committee? Councillor Liu.
Thank you, through the chair. It seems to me that it looks like a strip mall to me. Like there's a Starbucks in it, Benjamin Moore, I don't know if they're still there, but there's, the lighting store, there's all these essentially retail stores there. So how is this different than anything else? And if we go further along Bridgeport, there's the, West Coast Kids, that's all retail store. There's the home store next door. Like everything's retail there. So how is what these guys are asking for and not what, like matching what's going on already in that strip mall?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, in terms of the uses on the site, the existing properties zoned industrial retail. Industrial retail does allow for specific retail uses. Those retail uses are limited to the sale of building materials. In terms of the other uses on the site, all of the stores are generally classified as warehouse sales, selling building renovation material. Restaurant is a permitted use within the IR1 zone, and that is why there is a Starbucks on the site. In terms of retail liquor, we do see that as significantly different from the retail sale of tiles, building materials, paints, etc. Our analysis was based on the council policy.
But would the average consumer in Richmond think that there was? I don't think the average consumer in Richmond would figure out that bit of minutia. So I'm wondering if it makes sense to.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Erceg?
I think the way to look at this policy is that the intent in terms of placement of the liquor stores is that they would be located in neighborhood commercial centers, kind of like where you can go to pick up your groceries and liquor, but it doesn't, the intention was not that you would, for instance, go out and pick up your lighting or some furniture, which is the limited sort of retailing that this zone allows, and your liquor, right? So this is a distinct retail area with very limited retail uses, and really the policy, when it was debated and adopted some years ago, focused on, council's intent at the time anyway, was that the liquor stores would be located kind of where you do your personal shopping, grocery shopping, that type of thing.
Any other speakers? Now, Mr. Van Vliet, are you there? Would you like to make a presentation to committee?
Yes, thank you. I have a brief presentation.
All right, you'll have 5 minutes. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, first off, thank you to the Planning Committee for being here today. Van Langes Consulting has applied to the City of Richmond for a site-specific zoning text amendment to permit a retail liquor store to operate on the property at 12571 Bridgeport Road, Unit 140. The proposed location is a commercial unit within a single-story building comprised of industrial and retail uses. The unit is currently vacant and was previously operating as Boardwalk Wood Floors. It's approximately 2,250 square feet with adequate parking and loading. We feel that the size of the unit is quite small. Will have almost a negligible impact on the industrial versus retail debate. In this brief presentation, I'd like to discuss a few main points. The first being that there will be no net increase in the number of liquor stores within the city of Richmond. In our initial application submission, we had proposed to transfer an existing LRS license from outside of Richmond. In the early stages of our application, planning staff had commented that council has expressed that they do not want to see a proliferation in the number of liquor stores in the city. With this concern in mind, we altered our application to help meet the requirements of planning and council. We began by contacting other private liquor store owners within the city and discovered that the West Coast Liquor Company, who are the owners of the store at Vancouver International Airport, confirmed that they are relocating this existing store out of Richmond within the same timeline as our application. They provided us a signed letter to confirm this so that we may eliminate the concern of an increased number of liquor stores within the city. And that letter should be included in this, in the package that planning provided. The second point is that there was a positive outcome from the independent market survey. On November 24th, 2020, Hemlock Carling Distribution Incorporated performed an independent market survey as instructed by Richmond Planning and Development. A total of 1,207 individual letters were sent out to all of the homes and businesses in the surrounding catchment area. On the cutoff date of December 11th, 2020, there were only 26 responses in total from the 1,207 sent out. Out of those 26 responses, 19 were in support, while only 7 came back opposed. So there was 73% in support versus 23 in opposition. This led to an overall response rate from the survey of only 2.15% and an opposed response rate of less than 1%, only 0.58%. The surrounding area was well aware of the proposed retail liquor store, as the development sites had been posted since October, and the individual survey response letters were mailed to each individual address. The response from the community was clearly positive with almost no opposition. The third point is that our proposed location already has an approval in principle from the provincial government's Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. The only pending item for their approval is a zoning confirmation from the municipality. Another point I'd like to comment on is the city's liquor retail policy criteria. So in the existing policy, there's 3 criteria. 1, a minimum distance from 1 kilometer away from any existing store, which we've met. 2, a minimum distance of 500 meters from any school, park, or community center. And 3, we should be located within a commercial shopping center with an aggregate floor area of at least 2,800 square meters. So the proposed location clearly meets the first 2 points in the policy. The third point has been argued by planning staff that we do not meet the criteria. However, there is no definition in the policy for exactly how the commercial shopping area is defined. In our view, the overall surrounding area surrounding the proposed location is in fact a massive commercial shopping area, and it includes uses like Home Depot, Staples, McDonald's, Starbucks, etc. The immediate neighbors are all commercial uses, and therefore this proposed store would have no impact on any family-oriented uses, as there are none nearby. The intent and application of the policy is clearly met with this proposed location. Access to liquor retail in the northeast quadrant of the city is quite limited.
Can you wrap up now? Your 5 minutes is up, please. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just the last paragraph. Thank you. The area that this store is intended to serve is underserved for liquor retail relative to the rest of the city. By approving this store, residents and employees of the area would be within walking distance to the store rather than continue having to drive further distances to liquor retail. It should be regarded as a positive addition to the area, as it would also give a boost to the surrounding businesses currently operating. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? I don't see any. There is a recommendation in our package. Oh, sorry, Councillor McNulty.
From him, I want to make a motion.
Oh, so, okay, thank you, Mr. Van Vliet. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion on this, and I'll see if I get a seconder, and if not, I'll speak to it. I'd like to make a motion that the retail liquor store at Bridgeport Road be approved.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Liu.
Yeah, the reason, Your Worship, that I've looked at this very, very carefully, and I don't want to hide behind any of our policies, et cetera, but we have been inconsistent, in my opinion, in a number of not just liquor stores, but other things that we've done. And yes, it's contrary to a number of things, but this is a retail business that can come into our community. I know when it becomes alcohol, everybody hides behind it, but they've done everything that is required. They've got 75% of the people around them in favor. They follow the linear distances mentioned. The provincial government has a policy. They follow the school thing. You can argue what that shopping center is or not. We've had an explanation why we have a Starbucks there and a McDonald's across the street. And then all the way down Bridgeport, we've got retail and we've got restaurants and we've got drive-in white spots and little restaurants, et cetera, in industrial areas. This brings a business to our community, but more importantly, you know, we have a beer establishment on Horseshoe Way. We established that right in smack dab, and it's not a liquor store, I know, but that's an inconsistency if you wish, but I look at it as not inconsistent. That's a positive business that's come to our community. We've got Lansdowne, no matter how you slice Lansdowne, but you got a liquor store beside a furniture shop, and I forgot what else is there, but it's a little liquor store in the whole, and you can say, well, Lansdowne's a commercial thing. To me, I don't treat it as that. It's a retail area on it. I guess what also bothers me is but in our policies, 12.4 industrial retail, IR1 and IR2, it says you can have a microbrewery there. You can have a winery and distillery, and that was a bylaw 10181, February 6, 2021. You can have a restaurant there. You can have a drive-through. You know, so I think we have to look as stewards of the city in how we want to see our city and what businesses we have. We're losing businesses at a rate that I don't like to see, especially in terms of small retail clothing operators and what have you. And I wouldn't be frequent at this place, but others would, and that's up to them. So I think it's positive. It's an opportunity. If people want to drive there, serve the northeast sector of town, that's fine. I'm not going to jump up and down because it's our job to interpret how we see things in terms of land use. Maybe the next time we put a restaurant in there, and whether we go down and give them a liquor license. It's not big enough probably for it, but if you amalgamate a couple of the places I've visited a number of times, I've used a tile place, I used a lighting place, furniture place behind. I kind of know the area well, so I'm speaking in favor of giving them the opportunity to put a business in there. Can always convert it. We'll say, well, it's not industrial, but we don't have anybody's lining up to put an industrial in there. But I think it's something that could serve the community well. So I'll be supporting granting the license for it, because they already have that. I believe in our package they have that support already, that the government has already said that they could go in there, and we possibly end up balancing, if we wish to go with absolute numbers, what's happening out at the airport. I know we get hung up on some of these things, so I'm just glad it's not a cannabis shop. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I read this one carefully, and I think that staff are right, and I will be supporting denying the permit for a number of reasons. First of all, there's already a liquor store on Bridgeport further down. Second of all, there's a liquor store in the Canby Plaza Mall at 5 and Canby. So there's plenty of areas to purchase liquor in the area. Now, have they, as Councilman McNulty pointed out, been putting in a microbrewery like Firework and Firework, which is on Horseshoe Way? I would 100% support it because it's an industrial use. That particular mall is a great place to buy building material, and often you see businesses come in and then they move on to a bigger establishment. It's a great way for a business that supplies building materials to get into the market, build a name for themselves, and then move to a larger premise. I also think that when it gets down to it, I know this is splitting hairs, but staff have come up with a very reasonable explanation.
Can you speak a bit closer to your microphone? We're having trouble hearing you. Thanks.
Sorry about that, Madam Chair. I think that there's already 2 liquor stores in the area, one at Canby and 5 and one down at Bridgeport, closer to basically Shell Road. And so there is no need for a third one. And second of all, if this was a microbrewery like Puggles and Warlock, which is located in an industrial area, I would support it 100% because it would bring another new business that is compliant with the regulations. I appreciate that the owner wants to put it there, but it's just not a great location. And I feel that strip mall really does cater to people who are doing renovations in their home. And subsequently, I've been in there many, many times, and I'll go to 2 or 3 shops at the same time because you can get everything you need: flooring, paint, tiles, plastic products. You name it, they've got it in that little mall. So to lose that valuable space to a liquor store that's about pretty much, and should go, as staff has pointed out, in a more neighborhood mall would be a better place for it. So I do support staff's recommendations, and I will be voting to deny this application. And I hope that the applicant will find another location that's more suitable. Thank you.
Mr. Ursig?
Madam Chair, I just want to point out, because there have been 2 references to a license, what we're talking about here is in fact a rezoning. It's an amendment to the industrial retail zone. So just a point of clarification, we're not talking about a business license here, we're talking about changing your industrial retail zone. So it's somewhat more permanent than simply issuing a business license.
Steves?
Yeah, thanks. I will not be supporting this going ahead either. The provincial government support is simply supporting a liquor store. They're probably not even aware it's a rezoning because they have no right to interfere into our industrial zone or any of our zones. And I think that's important to recognize that they may support a liquor store, but that has absolutely nothing to do with our zoning process. Every time we lose industrial land, we have somebody coming along for an equal or double amount of farmland. And as we've been discussing at Metro Vancouver, we're having real problems with trying to keep a hard line around the AR. We're looking at putting a hard line around industrial land. In fact, there was a motion at the board a couple of weeks ago. It was defeated, but I supported it. The mayor opposed it, but we wanted to put a hard line around industrial land, so this kind of thing couldn't happen anywhere in the region. So I think it's important that we say no to this proposal and stop watering down our industrial lands because we are running out.
All right, is there any more discussion from committee? Okay, see none, I'll call the question, and this is to approve. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, where did Councillor Day go? Sorry, was that Councillor Day and Councillor Steves? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Councillor McPhail. So it is defeated with Councillor McPhail, Day, and Steves in the opposition. So I guess what happens now, Mr. Clerk? It goes through with no recommendation? Yeah. So this will go through to council with no recommendation. Thank you. Item number 3, application by Firework Productions Limited for a temporary commercial use permit renewal at 8351 River Road and Duck Island, Lot 87, Section 21, Block 5, North Range 6, West Plan 34592. Mr. Craig and Mr. Ang, and Mr. Raymond Chung, the applicant, is also here with us today.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. The application before you is a temporary commercial use permit renewal application for the purposes of allowing the Richmond Night Market event to operate during the 2021, 2022, and 2023 seasons. This temporary commercial use permit is a land use application to authorize the temporary use of the site for a seasonal outdoor market event. The Richmond Night Market is subject to all provincial health officer public health orders, and current public health orders in place for these types of events would not allow for this event to occur at this present time. If public health orders are modified and regulations implemented to allow this event to occur, the Richmond Night Market will be required to comply with all public health orders and regulations in order to operate. The proposed temporary use permit also incorporates scheduling flexibility for the 2021 season in response to the uncertainty caused by the pandemic that is consistent with the operational parameters established for this event during a typical season. The application has been reviewed by the city's Transportation Department, RCMP, and Richmond Fire Rescue, with all operational matters and concerns being addressed. A noise management plan, which includes regular monitoring throughout the market season, will be required prior to issuance of the business license to the event operator to ensure the event complies with the city's noise regulation bylaw. Community bylaws will ensure the event follows the provisions of the noise management plan. Happy to answer any questions from committee.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just one question on it. Thank you for the report. This operator has operated very successful night markets since day one in Richmond. I can't remember how many years has gone. How does this application change from the previous one that council's approved over the years? Isn't it basically the same, with the same requirements, and maybe just updated?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, the application is generally the same in terms of the overall land use. There is one key new component which has been introduced into this renewal, which is around noise management and the requirement for a noise management plan to ensure compliance with the city's noise bylaw. Other than that, it is consistent with all previous applications.
Okay, thank you for that. And if Bonnie Henry said shut down massive gatherings like this, this would automatically go into effect for this particular event, the same as anything else in the city, and then start up again when the coast is clear, so to speak.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, that's correct. This would be similar to a restaurant. A restaurant land use is in place. It can't operate currently under public health orders. Should those health orders change, the restaurant would be allowed to operate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I've been to this market, and I know people just love it, and it's a very successful model, and I'm happy to see it come back. Having said that, I have gotten so many phone calls and letters from people who live on Corvette Way and the surrounding area about noise. Not about people shopping or parking, but loud rock and roll music and performances. As I read the report on page PLN 143, we talk a lot about basically monitoring, and then on page 144, if noise concerns persist through the receipt of public complaints or ongoing monitoring, then the city has the ability to undertake the following actions. Why are we waiting for people to get really mad and start phoning us and writing letters to us? Why don't we just mitigate it right from the get-go? And it's something as simple as moving the stage so that it's orientated towards the water instead of being orientated towards the high-rises. I'm very concerned about this, and I hope the market opens. It's a wonderful opportunity, and people line up to get in. But why can't we deal with it now rather than wait till we get noise concerns?
I believe Ms. Williams. Sorry, Mr. Craig, go ahead.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I'll provide a response if there's further information. Ms. Williams will provide that. In terms of the requirement for a noise management plan, that requirement comes prior to operation of the market. So prior to operation of the market, a plan must be prepared that demonstrates the market can operate within the city's noise bylaws. The information on page PLN 144 is simply to identify that should they come out of compliance with their noise management plan, there would be progressive actions taken to rectify the situation. And if no rectification has occurred, ultimately the city would retain the ability to cease operation of the market.
Okay, just to follow up, please, Mr. Craig. So we've already had complaints in previous years. So clearly, whatever the noise bylaws that are in place now are, they're too lenient for the people who live in those high-rises across the way of T. Allen Way. I don't see why we can't simply go with the past history, and I'm sure Carly can tell us about the numbers of complaints, and maybe just adapt to the location, move the stage, and potentially stop the complaints from coming in the first place. I think that they're too lenient.
Ms. Williams,
through the chair, through the chair to Councillor Day, I'm only aware of one complainant about Surrounding Noise. And when the complaint was investigated, it wasn't offside of the noise bylaw. But with this in mind, we still decided that the better thing to do would be to do a noise study, because we do think there's things the operator can do with different sound equipment and stage, and we think that should be informed by a noise study that reduces impact. Because it's not just about complying with the bylaw. We think that the operator can do a better job at minimizing the impact, even if it's not offside of the bylaw. So this requirement for a noise study puts it in the hands of a professional to make recommendations as to how to position things to minimize the impact.
So this noise study is going to be done before the season starts. Is that correct?
That, through the chair to Councillor Day, that is correct, and then they will have to maintain it and do follow-up measurements if things in real life don't occur as projected in the study.
Thank you. That clears things up for me. Thank you very much.
Councillor Liu?
Thank you. Through the chair, question to staff. There are a number of requirements for parking, for traffic, and whatnot. Normally, if we would have any other sort of thing like this, wouldn't we be requiring bike parking for people? And can we ask the applicant to provide some bike parking? And certainly, while understanding it's an evening event, so it's not going to require the same levels necessarily, but some should be supplied, and then see how it goes, maybe add more if more becomes necessary.
Through the chair, in response to Councillor Liu, perhaps I think the event organizer can speak to provisions about bike storage or bike secure facilities that they may have planned or arranged for upcoming events.
Okay, but question to staff though, like if I was opening a mall in Richmond or something else, or I was having some other retail, or even putting on, some event with, I don't know, or kind of fair event or something, I'd have some sort of bike parking sort of required there as part of my requirement, right? So I'm wondering why this isn't sort of included as one of the requirements.
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, yes, if this was a permanent applicant or a permanent use, we would be seeking bicycle parking. I'm sure the applicant would agree that should this advance through planning committee today, that prior to this application being advanced to public hearing, we can provide committee and council with greater details on how to accommodate bicycle parking as part of the event.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from committee? All right, seeing none, I'd invite Mr. Chung. Would you like to speak to committee? And there's been a couple of questions. Perhaps you can answer those and anything else you'd like to add. We can't hear you.
Hi there.
Hi, great.
Hi, councilors. Thanks for having me here. I just want to clarify about the biking, about storage. Actually, the night market actually have about 20 to 30 parking spots for bikers, and at the front of the entrance, actually we have the free rental bike service actually at the enter of the night market as well. Throughout the year, we have quite a few of bikers that like to come along and visit the night market, so that has been already been arranged in the past years.
And anything else you'd like to add, or?
Yeah, just want to say thanks to the, I mean, this year it's been difficult, and last year, as you know, the night market has been basically shut down due to the condition we're in right now. I mean, this TCUP, and I just want to say thank you to the planning department. I mean, they work really hard with this TCUP because, you know, they have tried to work so hard and trying to find different ways, trying to accommodate the condition we're in right now. So, just want to take this opportunity to thank the city and also the staff for helping us through this tough time.
All right, thank you. Any more questions from committee?
Second.
The recommendation has been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you very much. Item number 4, Market Rental Agreement, Housing Agreement, Bylaw 10243, to permit the City of Richmond to secure market rental housing units at 9900 Number 3 Road and 8031 Williams Road. Mr. Craig and Ms. Lucier?
Through the chair, this housing agreement bylaw secures the rental tenure of all 33 units in this development, in keeping with the rezoning that council has already granted third reading to. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any any questions from committee?
Move
We have all the answers. It has been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 5, amendment to the appointment of an approving officer. Mr. Craig.
Second.
The recommendation has been moved and seconded. Are there any questions from committee? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 6, update on the City of Richmond Tree Protection Bylaw number 8057. We do have Mr. John Roston, who's registered to speak, and we'll get to him in a bit. For committee, there are 3 pieces of correspondence that are on table from Mr. Roston, Ms. McGugan, and Ms. Starchuk. And I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Cooper.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Oh dear. Sorry. Good afternoon.
Oh, dear.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Just
Better. That's better.
okay. Sorry about that. My apologies. Just a few summary remarks before accepting questions. We wish to provide summary remarks for the purpose of this report. The report is to bring before committee the efficacy of the bylaw through a discussion on statistics describing tree protection activity, to provide an explanation on the mechanics of the bylaw's administration within its legal context, and to propose amendments according to the findings. We're happy to answer questions at this point.
Thank you. I'll open it up to committee. Are there questions from committee? Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things in the bylaw. One, Does the bylaw refer to agricultural fruit trees and what have you? On agricultural land and or on residential properties?
Through Madam Chair, the tree protection bylaw does not have any jurisdictions on agricultural lands, on agricultural and on portions of agricultural lands. However, it does have application on the non-farming portions of agricultural land. And yes, the tree protection bylaw is enforced on residential properties,
Yeah, but
residential zoning.
I agree with that, but I need to replace my, my 2-inch apple tree. It's split because of waterlogged. We're already 6 feet below the dike on the west dike, and I'd like to replace my apple tree and go to Art Knapp's and buy a 5-incher. Do I have to come and get a permit for that?
Through Madam Chair, I'd like to refer that question to Mr. Jag.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, no, you don't. The bylaw regulates trees 20 centimeter caliber or greater, so 8 inches in diameter or greater. So that would be an undersized tree that you would not need a permit for.
But if it was 20 inches, what I'm trying to get at are agricultural tree replacements any different than changing a conifer? There's nothing in the bylaw that says anything about agriculture. It doesn't say also including agricultural trees. So, or fruit trees.
So specifically fruit trees, so just to be clear, trees on agricultural land, there is an exemption.
No, I'm talking about my backyard, my residential backyard.
Oh, your backyard?
I have a fruit tree out there. I'd like to replace it. It's greater than 10 centimeters, okay? Do I have to come in and get a $50 permit to replace that with the one fruit tree I'm going to replace it with at Art Knapp's? Because I can't buy a 10 centimeter tree at Art Knapp's.
Right. Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, if the tree was over 8 inches in diameter, it would fall within the provisions of the bylaw that you would be required to get a permit to remove it.
Okay, then I think we need to somewhere in the bylaw say all trees, because it doesn't say that, and people think that maybe agricultural trees are sacred, and you know, a cherry tree or an apple tree or a peach tree or whatever. Okay, I think that's important. So somewhere in there it doesn't say that, so I think we need to put that in, and we also need to make sure that we have it also stated about agricultural land in there. I have a question with regard to the fees. For fines and what have you, are we charging max of what we can charge as a city, or can we adjust that? What's our control of the amount of a fine for removing a tree or cutting a tree down without a permit?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, under the bylaw, the fines range between $1,000 and $10,000. That is the range. We are at the maximum right now for $1,000 under the municipal ticketing bylaw that we can write tickets for. So $1,000 is the maximum under the bylaw based on the Local Government Act. So that is set. We are at our maximum. If we choose to seek fines greater than the maximums under the municipal ticketing bylaw, we would need to proceed to provincial court before a judge.
Is there an automatic amount? If you mentioned 1,000, from 1,000 to 10, if I can get my hand slapped for removing a tree for $1,000, okay, I'm going to cut it down. But if I know I'm going to automatically get hit for 10 grand before I start, I'm going to think twice. I guess that what I'm trying to look at is are fines a deterrent? And so that's what I'm wondering. Is there an automatic fine level for cutting a tree?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the municipal ticketing bylaw is the maximum set amount for writing the ticket, but the city can absolutely proceed through provincial court and seek a higher amount if we choose. And again, that higher amount is at the discretion of the judge.
Okay, but there's no...
We have pursued that route historically, and for greater fines based on the situation.
But there's no automatic. That I cut a tree down, automatically 10 grand. It could be
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, no, there isn't. No, there isn't. We write tickets. The maximum amount we write for is $1,000 for a ticket, and that's set by the provincial government.
Oh, okay, that's what I was looking for. So our fees are in line with statutes that are beyond our control.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, they are.
Okay, thanks very much for now.
Councillor Liu?
Thank you, through the chair, to staff. In Richmond, I think there's sort of an expected age range for trees in Richmond. Is that correct? Especially for things like evergreen trees, because they don't have tap roots the same and stuff. So can you give me kind of a range that...
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, just for clarification, are you asking what's the maximum age of some of our oldest trees in Richmond?
Well, it seems to me that we probably have some data on what an average lifespan of a tree in Richmond is and what we can generally expect. So if I were to plant a sequoia in my backyard and let it go for 80 years, it may or may not keep going. But if I plant it down in the redwood forest, it's probably going to go for hundreds of years. But it's probably, like, there weren't trees here 100 years ago that many, so like what is a real life expectancy for some of these trees? And it seems that a lot of trees seem to get a disease after a certain length of time, or their tap roots, or they're rotted out in the middle, or whatever else. So there seems to be sort of a, in my experience, around sort of a 50-year lifespan for a lot of trees. Is that, am I correct, or am I completely off base here?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, life expectancy for trees is really quite varied. It's really dependent on the type of tree. So you had mentioned a sequoia. In the forest, they would have an 800-year lifespan. But in an urban environment, trees planted in an urban environment do have a reduced lifespan. I would say you could get trees that if they were planted 100 years ago and they had adequate space and soil and nutrients and water, you could expect them to reach upwards of 100 years. That would not be uncommon, but definitely, as you pointed out, trees in an urban environment, they do have a lesser lifespan what they would naturally have in, say, a forest environment.
Okay, so we still want to have some incentive for people to deal with their diseased trees so they don't, get everything else diseased in the neighborhood. I think we want to encourage people to replace aging trees before they get too big or before they start destroying the sidewalk or the neighbor's driveway and that kind of stuff. And so I'm wondering, could we look into an option of front-ending it? So say you plant your replacement tree this year, and in 3 years you take down the tree that you want to take down, and then, then it's had time to get established, and it's not as shocking to the neighbor when you're taking it down, because there's already a nice big tree in your yard up and going. Is there a possibility, can we do a referral for that, perhaps?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, most of the trees that are approved for removal actually have significant structural defects. So they're actually, it's a hazard situation that we're dealing with public safety. So it's not something that we would want to let sit for 3 years. I think if residents are thinking about taking a tree down, or they have concerns about a tree, they are certainly able to jump the gun and provide a replacement tree ahead of time if they wish. But that would be a very, can't see how we could work something like that, because really it's the immediacy of structural defects and hazards to the public of trees in an urban environment that why we're issuing permits for the removal.
Okay, so you wouldn't, but how would you decide that that's a replacement tree then if they've already planted it, right? Like, if they were trying to do that process?
Again, what you're suggesting, through the chair to Councillor Liu, what you're suggesting, that would be the challenge too, is what was a tree that was planted as a replacement? Or required as condition of a permit. So we have a process of inspecting replacement trees after they're planted to ensure they're established related to tree permits. Residents often plant additional trees on their own accord of something that may not be like a palm tree. It's not actually a tree, it's a grass, and it's not on our suitable trees for replanting list, so that wouldn't be accepted. So I think it's important that there's a process and a sequence where we have opportunities when a permit is applied for to give residents all the information they need to plant a tree correctly, to choose an appropriate tree species versus, say, a hedging cedar, which would not be allowed.
So someone has to wait until their tree is suitably diseased or damaged enough for them to think to replace it, instead of thinking that, you know, it's starting to get big, it's starting to get out of control, it's like, it's heading towards 60 years old, maybe it's time to replace this and put the 2 replacement trees in. So that's not something we're considering as a reasonable thing for a homeowner to do.
Madam Chair, if I can perhaps jump in here, I think that if we're aware that a tree is diseased or a hazard tree, we certainly wouldn't be encouraging someone to leave that tree for 3 years and plant something ahead of time. So I think it is a little bit problematic in terms of sequence to try to write a bylaw that allows trees that are planted today to count for as the replacement tree for a tree that's removed in the future. I think, frankly, that's open to abuse, and it doesn't really exist anywhere. But I want to just point out that, because there's a misunderstanding with some people about the bylaw. For homeowners, you don't get to automatically remove healthy trees. So if a tree is not diseased, is not hazardous, you don't get one freebie a year for removal or anything like that. And under the bylaw, Gordon and his team often refuse permits for the removal of healthy trees. And when it comes to healthy trees, we would not want to have a bylaw and get into a situation where people are planting the replacement tree ahead of applying for the removal of a healthy tree. So I think that in terms of administration, there are some real challenges with what is being suggested in, planting replacements ahead of time. Now, if a homeowner wishes to plant more trees, period, we would welcome that, and there's nothing in this bylaw that stops them from doing that at any point in time.
I see where you're going with this. What I'm saying is, I think one of our goals is to have a certain tree canopy in Richmond. And so while some big old trees are nice, not all big old trees are nice. And so if we're trying to have a nice canopy in our neighborhood, if there's going to be an ebb and flow of cutting down trees and putting new trees in. So instead of chopping down the big, huge tree and then having this bald spot for a couple of years until the new trees take in, you could plant new ones and have kind of a planned process for how you're going to move through this, so it's not that shock to the neighborhood. And I think that's what people want. They want a managed canopy in their neighborhood. They don't want trees that finally wait until they're diseased and the branch falls off and hits people and the sidewalk gets broken and grandma trips over it. And I think that's kind of what people are talking about. They want to make sure that we're maintaining this canopy or creating a canopy and having something for the birds to live in and for everything else. I also think we should have a maximum number per lot space. So if you have a lot and you've allowed it to completely get overgrown, you shouldn't be penalized to finally take down those diseased trees that you now have to figure out how to replant 80 trees somewhere. And so if we had a maximum for an average size lot of, say, 10 trees for replanting, I think that's probably a reasonable thing for people to be looking at and having to deal with, so that they're not hit with huge traffic, tree fines or charges.
All right, Councillor Day?
Thank you very much. I'm very surprised to hear that palm trees are not considered trees, that they're grasses. I have a palm tree in my backyard that's 30 feet tall, so I'm I'm very surprised to hear that, and wouldn't mind, is there some way to declare a palm tree a tree, even though by some definition they're not?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, actually palm trees it's called a herbaceous monocot, and they do grow like some shrubs to a tree-like form, but they are a tree. They are classified as a tree. They're classified as a grass, and as much as they're a tree form. So we have things like a lilac bush that could grow into a tree form, but there are horticultural challenges, but we have to follow the classifications that exist in the industry.
All right, thank you. I divert. That wasn't my original question. I was just curious about that. Okay, so the famous tree in the Edgemere neighborhood, the big, humongous, beautiful tree, where the builder was well aware that this tree was not allowed to be taken down, but I went to the property before he cut it down and told him not to do it. And then he cut it down anyway. Is he an example of someone, so I noticed they put a stop work order on the building of the new house. Is that one that we would take to court and go to the maximum $10,000 fine? And does the builder have the option of just paying the fine as opposed to actually going to court?
Madam Chair, I think that we should take any discussion about an actual infraction to a closed session. And we could pick up this in the closed session later. I think that whenever there is willful destruction of trees and there is sufficient evidence, then we would be looking to take action. Because, frankly, you don't want the bylaw to be perceived as not being actively enforced, because that just encourages abuse. So if there's willful damage and we have the evidence, our inclination is to take legal action and seek the maximum penalties we can through the court.
So how many people have we taken to court to get $10,000 fines paid?
I'm going to ask Madam Chair if Gord has that information. If he doesn't, then we can provide it to you in a confidential manner.
All right, thank you. Councillor Steves.
Yeah, just wanted to comment on one of the comments one of the other councillors made. The lifespan of a tree in Richmond, the average lifespan of a fruit tree is about 75 years. Some of the conifers, depending where they are, the lifespan is maybe 100, but when they get too tall, they blow down. We planted a fir tree and a shore pine, goodness knows, about 70 years ago, I guess. And we didn't think the shore pine would blow down because it was only about 40 feet tall. The fir was about 60 feet tall. Both of them blew down. The shore pine ruined my truck. So it becomes a bit of a problem when depending on the kind of trees that you plant. And quite honestly, we should not be encouraging people to grow tall trees that can do damage to property. So I find it a little bit difficult in discussing these things simply because we don't know a lot of things, and certainly we didn't know when we planted the fir tree and the shore pine that they were actually dangerous trees. The other thing we should be considering is that we should be actually encouraging the removal of what do you call it, not the poplar, the one that gets rotten in the middle. Can't even think of it.
Cottonwood?
What?
Was it cottonwood?
Cottonwood. We cut some down at Britannia. We didn't cut them all down, and we should be doing that because they used to call them widowmakers because they rot through the middle, and then a branch falls on somebody and kills them. So there's different stories for different trees, and I don't think we've actually analyzed the types of trees that we want to be growing in Richmond. Richmond soils were not designed for conifers and were not designed for cottonwoods. And so, and yet that's what we seem to be growing, not the cottonwoods, but the conifers are quite popular. So I think that we really should be analyzing the trees, and no taproots, as somebody said, survive. So when the tall trees don't have decent taproots, there's nothing really to hold them up when the wind blows. So I think we really should be doing an analysis of the types of trees that we really want growing in Richmond. The other thing I want to comment is and this is not to negate the report. I think the report's great, but I'm more concerned about what's happening in the rest of the BC. Here we are discussing one or two trees in Richmond that people are cutting down, and yet our BC government is cutting down old growth forests. One of our 8-inch in diameter trees is about 1,000 times less desirable than a 1,000-year cedar tree that may be 5 or 6 feet in diameter, and yet that's what our province is cutting them down. And at the end of this, I'd like to propose that I give a notice of motion that we endorse a resolution passed by Port Moody Council at the last council meeting, March 23rd, and endorse it and which calls on the BC government to stop cutting down old growth forests, and recommends it goes to the UBCM and to the Lower Mainland Municipal meeting in May, I think it is. So I just want to make that as a notice of motion after this is over, that staff could probably get that. I was just reading their report this afternoon, and it passed on their agenda. And it's an excellent article and research done on it by Mayor Bagramov, and I think that we need to endorse it.
I'll come
because
to you.
Here we are.
Yeah, I'll come to you at the end, and you can make that notice of motion.
That'd be great.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, through the chair, to staff. I have a few questions on this. That actually relate to some of the correspondence we received. So first off, on our in the report on page 239, it mentions there that the Save Richmond Community Group was the changes to the report to the bylaw reflect feedback from that group. Yet when I read the correspondence from the group that just came in with all the additional signatures on it, it seems that lots of the things that they are asking for are not in here. So when was that feedback session, and has there been any recent connection with the group? Because it seems like the bylaw before us is in conflict to what they were hoping for.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the Save Richmond Tree group did a delegation to Planning Committee a few years ago. Staff have also met with some of the members of that group a number of years ago, and got some feedback from them. Some of the feedback, obviously, we haven't incorporated or been able to incorporate every suggestion they made, but some of the feedback was that tree permit fees were too low and needed to be higher. They were looking for larger trees to be planted, and the ratio of, they would like an increase in ratio of replanting. So we took all of those suggestions and we've integrated those into some of the changes that we brought forward to you today.
Great, thank you. Through the chair, probably follow up on a few more points. First off, looking across the board, Metro Vancouver and a little bit beyond, our application fees still rank amongst the lowest in the region. If you go to Sunshine Coast, it's a little bit lower, but all the other Metro Vancouver municipalities seem to have higher application fees. Also, those same municipalities have, in addition, have security deposits, some of which are broken into two parts where you get it back at different times. And I'm aware that staff have plans that go back to a development site after developers put in a new set of townhouses and they have trees and they're supposed to live for a few years. And unless it's a complaint-based, it's very challenging for staff or even neighbors in that area to keep on top of trees. But if money is involved, if there's a way to get money back, then these developers will probably take that extra initiative and instill in the landscaping companies that needs to be a long-term component. My next question to staff is, what is our level as a city when it comes to consulting with landscapers who do business in the city? Because it seems like just in the last couple of years, there's been some hired landscapers that have done malicious things to trees to allow them to then become hazardous, to then allow them to be taken down and not replaced.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we actually have been spending a lot of time on enforcement when we find that trees have been damaged by, say, a gardener that usually cuts the grass and trims the bushes, and now they're going ahead and damaging trees, whether willfully or accidentally, thinking that they're doing the right thing. We do proceed with enforcement action against both the property owners and the landscapers. We have a lot of community outreach. We meet with those individuals and provide them information on proper pruning, where they can take pruning courses, where they can become certified. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword in enforcement action. We do, when a tree is damaged and there's no opportunity for crown restoration to occur, we require the property owner to get a permit to remove the tree and replace it with a new tree that is going to grow and develop and be a benefit to the community.
Yeah, through the chair, I really appreciate staff's action when we have been able to catch something like this in the act, and it seems like it's a productive method in those cases and utilization of staff time. Further to this, if I may, a few more short points. Golf courses are still excluded, and I think Richmond's the only place where that is the case. Were golf courses considered to be changed in this bylaw? For example, on number 5 road, there's a major development that was being proposed, and they cut down all these amazing, significant trees in the middle of the golf course that you can't really see from 5 road. But they did it, and all the trees were dead. They didn't have to replace anything. So have golf courses been considered to be included in this revamped bylaw?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, there's an exemption for golf courses because they're a managed facility where there's a value to the trees and there's a value that they want to maintain them. Vancouver also exempts golf courses as well. The property on number 5 road you're referring to, that land is actually an agricultural land and it was cleared for a farming, which there is an exemption for that.
Okay. Thank you. That was a bit of a touchy one. Maybe that's a closed discussion. The further up, if I may, through the chair, very briefly now, many other cities, including Vancouver, has removed the one tree cut allowance, and Mr. Ursig referred to that earlier. If the goal is to retain and grow the urban forest, then I think that needs to be done away with, that kind of one allowance. There should be a permit for that one tree so we can collect funding to do the great work that staff have outlined that they're doing already. Tree sales. Many municipalities offer tree sales, reduced rate. I don't see that in the report. Maybe it doesn't fit here, but it's going to be implemented through Parks Department or something. Maybe that could be commented on, because it seems to be a real hit, and it's only specific for residents proven in that area that get the discount trees. Maybe I'll let the comment come on there, and then I just have 2 more short points. Anything about tree sales or the one trees right here?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, just to clarify, State of Richmond's tree bylaw does not have a 1 tree per year provision. We've never had it, and the tree sales is definitely something we can discuss with the Parks Department. Vancouver is run through the Parks Department as well, and I think that's something that we could discuss with them.
Okay, thank you. And I'll clarify again with that, because there's a lot of residents who are concerned about the one tree cut allowance, but I've heard it from 2 of you now. It's not the case. So next, shortly, is hedges. I know, and small trees are not protected to the same standard as large trees. Other municipalities have protection for them. I think it's a loss in the bylaw to not include some level of protection, maybe not equivalent to the same, but we can cut numbers in half and say the same thing applies, just less amount. Mainly because low vegetation is essential for habitat for many species that don't use the high canopy of the trees. And finally, I discussed this with council yesterday around the habitat compensation that's critical. We've just removed a whole bunch of trees for emergency dike work on River Road, but we don't have a plan or a way to put those trees back in or to replace their quality, their habitat. I think this bylaw, when it's fully fleshed out, and I've been following it since 2006 when it first came to council then, with albeit a real long list of exemptions, but I'm happy that it's moved where it is today. But I think with the comments from the public and just a very simple sketch I was just making, I think one of the most important things about tree protection on private property is we go from this, where a tree can have deep roots and can grow big and can hold its ground, to allowing compacted sand, and the roots will never penetrate there again. The tree will never grow big again, and it does become more prone to diseases and blowing over. So the whole thing about protecting trees is not just about the tree in place today, but it's protecting that soil to allow the future trees, because no tree will live forever, but it needs that place to go. So those are my comments. There's no response needed on that last one. Thanks.
Thank you. I had a question. I know there's been discussion on the types of species. Now, do we have a list, don't we, of recommended replacement trees?
Yeah. Through the chair, yes, we do. It's suitable trees for replacing in the city of Richmond. It's made up of about 300 or 230 different tree species. And what we've tried to do in assisting residents is we've broken it down into small, medium, large trees, fastigia trees, and trees native to British Columbia.
All right, great. I'll come back to you. See no questions at the moment of staff. We'll go to our delegation, Mr. Roston. Good afternoon. And just
Good afternoon.
Address for the record, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. John Roston, 12262 Yuan Avenue. You have our written submission, so I'm not repeating that. I'd just like to add a few details. One point I'd like to emphasize is our confidence in city staff. So just from the questions you've asked, you can see how complex the subject is when we get to replacement trees. And if you look at Seattle's bylaw, for example, you will see they tried to provide for every possible situation with long lists of trees and exactly the size that has to be protected for each particular species. And I think, as a number of the councillors have pointed out, it's not just the tree, it's also where it's placed and how it's planted. So I know for my own house in Steveston, the developer used very poor soil. We wanted to plant a tree, and we had to get a truck in to remove all the soil in our yard and replace it completely. So the point we're trying to make is that we think staff should have an awful lot more leeway than they have now to evaluate each situation and to make it necessary that staff approve exactly which kind of tree should be planted where and how it ought to be planted. And perhaps even in some cases to go as far as to say city staff ought to plant the tree and the homeowner or developer ought to pay the cost. Because we see that happening continuously, that the wrong tree is planted in the wrong place in the wrong manner. On the size of trees, and the point we're trying to make really has to do with trees that are very large trees. So we're talking about 30 centimeter trees, not 20 centimeter trees. So these are trees that are 12 inches in diameter and usually about 75 feet high. And we're talking about healthy trees, not diseased or damaged trees. And the point we're trying to make really has to do with the benefits that such trees provide. And just to give you a few additional facts on that, the point of the tree canopy and of these very large trees is that the shade they're providing is lowering the demand for air conditioning in the surrounding houses. And that lowered air conditioning requirement means lower energy consumption, which, as you know, is a major concern of the city. And the other part is carbon storage. So just taking one example, if you take a maple tree of 30 centimeters, the bylaw requires it to be replaced by a tree of 6 centimeters. So in other words, the tree that's being removed is 5 times the size of the tree that's replacing it. And in terms of carbon storage, it's actually the larger tree is storing 8 times the carbon of the smaller tree. So a 6 centimeter tree is storing about 25 pounds of carbon a year, whereas the 30 centimeter tree is storing 200 pounds of carbon. It's an incredible amount of carbon that these large trees can store. And at the same time, through photosynthesis, these large trees are producing the same amount of oxygen as they absorb in CO2. So if it absorbs 3 molecules of CO2, it's producing 3 molecules of oxygen that it releases into the air. So it's really a matter of making sure that very large trees are protected when it comes to new construction. That's really where these very large healthy trees are being lost. Because as staff pointed out, very often if a homeowner wants to remove one just because they don't like the look of it, it's refused. And the point there, in terms of confusion about removing 1 tree a year, it's not that you could remove a tree a year, it's that the application fee was waived for 1 tree a year. You've always needed to get a permit.
Mr. Austin, your 5 minutes is up. If you could wrap up, thank you.
My very last point has to do with the fine, and to mention that a recent fine in Seattle for removing one of these very large trees was over $11,000. So a $10,000 fine is not unreasonable. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, getting back to committee. Are there any more questions from committee? Councillor Liu, you had your hand up there.
Thank you. I'd like to make a referral to review the types of trees on the suitable list on the city website. And, you know, we just heard from Councillor Steves that a shore pine is a deadly tree to put in, yet we've got that on our list of trees to have. And so maybe we need more instruction, or we need more, or at least something else on that list of suitable trees to direct people to figure out where to go to actually figure out what they should be planting, where they should be planting it, and how it makes sense. Because, you know, it doesn't, somebody looking at this, they're not figuring out clearly what needs to happen, because they just go to the list, pick a tree off the list, and they think it's fine. So it's clearly not fine. And so I think they need more help with it. I don't know that it's necessarily the city's job to go in and plant the tree on behalf of the person and then charge them for it. Although, you know, Mr. Roston had an interesting idea there. But certainly I think a bit more direction for people to understand where to go on this makes more sense. And I also think I'd like to have a referral on a maximum number of trees that someone should have to replace on a single family property.
Okay, so just to be clear now, these have no really impact. Perhaps I can ask this through to staff. So the type of trees and the maximum number of trees on a property are not included in this tree protection bylaw. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, good.
Staff do use discretion when looking at the number of trees that can be accommodated on site. One thing that we do not do is require overplanting. So that is something that we look at with every single application. also through the chair that the just for information that the suitable tree list, it's not a specific, the species of cottonwood that Councillor Steve mentioned that does break apart, that is not on our list, but all the other trees on here are safe to plant. It's just with any tree, as a tree gets older and depending upon the size and soils, that they sometimes can become destable as they get older, and that's one of the reasons it's important to maintain trees and have them inspected.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Councillor Liu. Let's get the bylaw staff recommendation. So that has been moved. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there a discussion on the recommendation on the floor? Councillor McNulty?
No, I wanted to make a recommendation on the types of trees. I want to
Okay, we'll come back to you. Councillor Liu has that. All right. Seeing no further questions on the motion on the floor, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Councillor Liu, now to your referral.
Referral to staff to review the types of trees on the suitable list on the city website. With respect to what Councillor Steves had been saying, it sounds like they're...
Is there a seconder? Oh, is
not.
it seconded? Yeah. Continue.
With respect to some of the stuff Councillor Steves has said, and then further to what Mr. Jaggs was saying, that, people don't seem to know how to keep them stable or what's required to keep them stable. So somehow something leading people to more information on the same page. So, there has to be more information to understand.
All right, Councillor Steves. Councillor Steves? Can't hear you.
Okay, I made it.
Okay.
Trying to find the unmute. I support the referral. I've looked at that list extensively. There are a number of trees I would never recommend. In fact, years ago I wrote a report and gave some recommended trees to the city, and what were suitable trees, I think, God knows, about 40 years ago, warning about some of the trees, what can happen when they get older. And unfortunately, it happened to us. But there was a time, around the time we planted the trees that blew down. It may well be we would look at areas, because we have to be right by the West Dike where you get a lot of wind. And there's 3 trees that we should never have planted. One was the shore pine, which is 40 feet tall, grew 40 feet tall. One was a fir tree that grew about 60 feet tall. And one is a weeping willow that's still there. But every time the wind blows, we're scared to the dickens. It's huge, and eventually it's going to hit our house. The roots go up and down like this, and the tree is almost like it's walking, because it has no tap root, and this huge tree is held up by roots that are in wet soil. And when the soil gets wet, then the tree blows over. And that's what we've never considered with any of our bylaws, and what type of trees we're planting. Because as was said earlier, tap roots don't work in this soil. Well, neither do spreading roots when there's a lot of rain and the soil is wet. When the tree gets big, it's going to come down. And I think that we need to review the tree list to make sure that we're not telling people they should be planting those types of trees. Those types of trees, the cedars and the firs and the shore pine in central Richmond probably are all right, because the wind break from all the houses they won't blow down. The weeping willow, I'm not sure. If you get a lot of rain when it gets as big as ours, it's going to blow down no matter where it is. So these are things that we really should be looking at when we make recommendations. So I support the referral.
Councillor Wolf, did you have a question about the referral?
Yes, thank you, through the chair to staff on this one. Well, actually, I don't know if I need to actually have a response to it. I'll just say that I'm not a voting member here on this committee, but I would definitely be opposed to anything where it takes the shore pine off the recommended list. There's really only 2 native trees to Richmond. We got the shore pine, which is the lodgepole pine, but growing near the coast, and the Pacific crabapple. So those need to be on our list. And I have shore pine in my backyard, and during that last windstorm, it came down and crashed over the raspberry patch. But that's to be expected. It's a 50-year-old tree, and I'm thankful the person before planted it. And so, if this goes back for referral, that's great. But in Councillor Liu's intention, I think it was also around education. And I've been to the Vancouver Tree Sales events. I've been to multiple ones to observe and to see the amount of education that goes to the Vancouver residents when they're at those. They get handouts, they get training, there are other groups there who are giving away small native plants to go with their tree. So again, that's the educational piece, and it just comes through some parks events that hopefully will come soon. Thanks.
I'm going to support the recommendation as well. Just over a year ago, I bought a Pacific Fire vine maple, which is on our list. And I was lucky enough to have a member of the Richmond Garden Club come and help me. And this goes to the education point. There's many things that I personally didn't know. The depth where it had to be planted, the soil treatment, how to work with the root ball, and how to do the topsoil. And so I think there is a good opportunity for us to give people education on planting the correct type of tree that is going to be, do well here and give them the best chance to grow here. So I'll be supporting. Councillor McNulty, is this on this referral?
Yeah, I think it can be on the referral. In terms of the trees, if I may, the Lombardy poplar and the cottonwood are two trees, as Harold said, and I know from full well, the cottonwood clobbered my father when he was a faller up in the Coquihalla Valley, that they're called widowmakers, and they split longitudinally and they rot internally. We have a lot of them along the rivers, on the North Arm, in East Richmond, and people have Lombardy poplars. In a way, they should never be planted. But I guess my question here is, how do we educate people? I don't want everybody to go cut down their cottonwood tree now, because they don't want them in the spring and summertime, because they provide the little fluff for allergies and what have you. So I think we've got to be careful of what we say we want to eliminate, and I think we have to have a policy of how we're going to handle them within the city. They grow to 70, 80 feet, and I've got them right across the street from me. When the wind blows, that tree bends, and so I think that those need to have special mention in that referral.
Thank you. Councillor Steves, did you have another point to make on the referral?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a request, a correction. I was not suggesting we should stop planting the shore pine. In fact, the exact opposite. We should be planting more of them. But they grow on bog land, and in bog land they don't go to 40 or 50 feet. They only go to 20 or 30 because they simply, they would grow down in the bog, I guess. But that's where they should be, and like the Garden City lands and places like that. So it's just we don't have a policy of where we plant trees and what type of trees. There's a lot to be looked at, and that's why it should be referred. But don't ban a tree from all of Richmond, because it's not right to put it in one place when it's better to put it in another place.
All right, thank you. And seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question on the referral. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Councillor Liu, did you have a second referral?
I'd like staff to recommend some options around maximum number of trees per residential lot.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Continue.
We saw it a few years ago. Someone was trying to redevelop and put some condominiums on at Williams and Gilbert, and they saved a couple of the trees, a couple of the important trees, but there were so many trees on the lot that their replacement policy ended up being that they were supposed to put in 80 trees. Well, obviously they couldn't do that, and it cost them a lot of money, but at some point we have to be reasonable and say that, in no circumstance should we just be hitting you at this point for the tax grab, essentially, of 70 extra trees. 10 would have been reasonable, maybe even 20 was reasonable, but, saying that 80 trees is a number that they got hit on because somebody let their yard go completely nuts, and then the guy, moves away and leaves the problem to somebody else. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think it's reasonable. And I think it's just creating a situation too where, it's giving people more incentive to get rid of their trees so that it doesn't cost someone in the long run.
All right. Any other discussion on this? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Councillor Steves, you have a notice of motion?
Yeah, my notice of motion that Richmond endorse and support the Old Growth Forest Resolution passed by the City of Port Moody March 23rd, 2021, and ask that staff get their motion on all the background information and provide it for the next committee meeting.
Second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Managers report. We do have a couple. Mr. Ursig?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I'll be brief. Just two things. I'd like to just formally announce that John Hopkins, who has just put his video on, has been appointed as the Director of Policy Planning. So we're very excited, and I'm pleased to announce that to you.
Congratulations.
And you will soon be hit with a flurry of policy planning reports. And so that brings me to the second item I wanted to update you on. I just want to confirm that we are on track to bring you three referral reports on housing to the May Planning Committee meeting. It will probably be the first meeting of May on the 4th. And so just as a reminder, the three referral areas are to review the market rental housing policies, to move from an incentive requirement to a mandatory requirement. The second report will be a review of the low-end market rental policies, so your LEMA strategy. And the third report will deal with restrictions on strata councils so that they can't prohibit certain age groups and the rental of units.
All right. Sounds good. Were there any other updates? I think that was it. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I think that's it.
All right.
Adjournment.
We are adjourned.
Madam Chair, if I may, before adjournment, I would ask the clerk to comment on the procedures related to item number 2.
Oh, yes. Mr. Clerk, item number 2.
Thank you. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam.
Just a sec. Where? Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Yeah, sorry for the late comment on this. We were just having some mic issues earlier in the meeting. So I just wanted to make an administrative comment with regard to item number 2. There's a bit of lack of clarity on that item at this point. And that is the application by Van Land Use Consulting for a text amendment for zoning to permit a retail liquor store on Bridgeport Road. And if you'll recall, there was a defeated motion actually to approve this application. That motion was defeated. So as it stands, what would happen is, in accordance with our procedures, that heading for that item would come forward to the next council meeting with no recommendation from the committee. So at this point, I'd just like to make a note that there's still an opportunity for the committee to provide clarity, some form of direction on that if it wishes to, and that's my
Okay, so you're saying that we could move the staff recommendation?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now we're back on item 2. Does anybody want to move the staff recommendation? Moved by Councillor Day, seconded by Councillor Steves. Is there any questions on that? Any more discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you,
And I think now, seeing no further business, we are adjourned. And please hang on, committee. We will be going into closed.